Okay.
Hey everyone, welcome
Um,
to our webinar tonight. We are both really excited to talk to you about this topic
yeah.
because it's something that a whole lot of people are talking about in the health space about how important relationships are to your overall health.
Yeah. I'd say actually nobody's talking about it really.
That's right. Nobody's talking about it, and it's so important. Tonight we're going to be going over how it impacts your health. We're going to be going over different techniques and strategies that you can use, and this is something that we believe is so fundamentally important to your health that we include it in all of our health reports. We go
Yeah.
over your specific attachment styles. It's in our intake form, and we have a whole relationship section on one of the sections in our reports that outlines specific tips for you and healthy relating strategies so you can implement this aspect into your own well-being. So we're really excited. Amazing. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. We're going to talk through we have a presentation today, but again, if there are any questions, please feel free to interrupt me if you want. If we would love this to be a conversation style, so please feel free to let us know if anything comes up along the way. And you can still see my screen. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Um, so the hidden key to health, your relationships, so important. Both Julie and I are going to be chatting today. And this is also something, if we can get a little bit personal, has both affected Julie and I. We both have gone through different iterations of relationships and ones that really benefited our health and felt really good and really calming and amazing, and ones that felt really challenging and aspects that we had to learn from, whether that was romantic, platonic, familial. So it's something we both have a lot of experience with and have both done a lot of work around this. So yeah, we're both very excited to be talking on this subject today. It's very personal for both of us. Okay. So, Julie, I don't know if you want to go over this, all the different ways that relationships impacts your health. I mean, you have done a ton of research on this.
Yeah, we have a blog. So not to go into all of the ways, we have a blog on the website. So on revhealth.com and you hit blog, relationships impact almost every single aspect of your health. And you know that this is you can feel it, right? Because if somebody upsets you or after you have a fight, like your stomach hurts. It impacts the way that you digest. It clearly affects your stress, but it actually affects also how you sleep, how you age, whether or not blood is pumping through your veins and you're able to even perform like athletically, and it can make you sick. So when you have, and we're talking about any type of relationship here. It could be your boss, family, romantic partners, as Maddie was saying. It could be your neighbors. It affects so much. So I think, we won't go into all of the details unless you want to go into a little bit, Maddie, of like specifically, like maybe some of the ones that aren't obvious, like the gut health.
Yeah, absolutely. So for gut health, I mean, our microbiome, really think about the microbiome as like the soil of our body. It's a lot of the roots and the foundation, and that soil can be really altered by the weather, right? So when we're in a relationship with someone and the weather of that relationship can be really tumultuous or really volatile, the soil and our microbiome is going to really shift and change in response to that weather and that environment. So the vagus nerve, this rest and digest nerve, that really puts us in this healing state, can't be activated if we're constantly in fight or flight. So we kind of have these two things going on at the same time. We have this like shifting soil environment that maybe isn't super fruitful to be able to grow things. And then we have this really nervous system imbalance it's kind of like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And then also, oh, aside from emotional health, physically, people actually, we get this question quite a bit. With gut health, do microbiomes, are they shared between couples? Like, can infections be passed between couples in the microbiomes? Things like H. pylori.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. Your partner's gut microbiome, and certain infections can be transferred just by, I mean, saliva alone. So making sure we're in, yes, emotionally healthy partnerships, but also physically healthy partnerships is very
Right.
important.
Yes, we do forget that things can be passed. And then, yeah, the aging one, the methylation. I think that some people were confused about that. Like it's not a joke. It actually can and does age you faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we are in more of this parasympathetic healing state and we have adequate nutrients and our bodies are regulated, we're able to have this sense of vibrancy and vitality. And that's just not woo-woo stuff. It directly translates to our bodies being able to methylate, which means it's they'll be able to transform processes into different processes. So it's what keeps us young. It's
Yeah.
what keeps our detoxification organs running effectively. And when we are in fight or flight, or we're using up our nutrients because we're in constant conflict, physically or emotionally, we age faster. So that's a very, very real reality about unhealthy partnerships.
Yeah. And methylation, I know this is really in layman's terms, but I like to think of it as like cell exfoliation.
That's right.
So you exfoliate your skin to renew the skin, and your cells like to exfoliate themselves. And when they can't, or they don't, or they're stucking onto something, they look and act and are aging faster. So I mean, that's super, but it makes sense, I think, to people when they're like, oh no, my cells aren't exfoliating. Like you're not methylating. You're not
Yes.
turning over the new. And if we think about it just in general, it's like, what is the emotional state when you're in some sort of a relationship that's not working? You're like holding on to everything.
Mhm. Yeah,
So we're going to
absolutely.
teach you how to not do that.
That's right. Being able to embrace this quality of transformation. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really beautiful the way those two things tie in together. But yeah, it really impacts you physically and emotionally. Your partner, there's a graph that shows the people that you'll spend the most amount of time with throughout your life. And in the beginning of your life, it's mostly your family. And that obviously makes sense that we're around our family as we're growing up. And, as we get older, the familial patterns decline, but your partner dramatically increases. This person that you're going to be spending the most amount of time with typically. So we have to be really careful about the people who we're surrounding ourselves by, and
Yeah.
especially the partnership we're choosing, because they will ultimately have the most dramatic effect on our health, especially as we continue to age.
And you are the median of the five closest people around you.
That's right.
So in some cases, we don't have a choice. And we can talk about that, how to build the strong relationships. But in some cases, we have to learn healthy techniques for relationships that might not be optimal. But in many cases, we have the ability to leave that relationship.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll talk more about that. So we're going to
Ooh.
get into, yes, the attachment style. So a lot of people have heard about attachment styles at this point. There's a great book attached that goes over these really, really beautifully. Really, four have been settled on about what is the different attachment style categories. When people learn this about themselves, they tend to really identify with one attachment style. Sometimes it can be a mix, but I want to encourage a little bit more flexibility with putting on these labels. Some people will say like I am anxiously attached. It can be really relationship dependent. So as you're reading through these, you might notice I might trend towards one of these. You might notice in other relationships you're trending towards a different attachment style. It might feel even this disorganized, which is a combination of both. And these aren't concrete, they change. The more that we can address our inner workings and our emotional well-being, the more that we can shift these patterns within ourselves. So, with that caveat, we'll go over them. Anxious attachment style, this is an attachment style that typically craves attention and reassurance from their partner. So in conflict, they are moving closer towards their partner. They're wanting their partner to validate their experience, to crave closeness, reassurance, securing that bond. And underneath this, the intention is really this fear of abandonment. They're nervous with their needs, or if they're not feeling validated, that their partner is going to walk away and abandon them. And they tend to have a tendency to self-sacrifice or make their needs smaller in order to make the connection work. So sometimes this looks like If your partner has a really strong opinion about something, you might just agree with them, just so it doesn't feel like that sense of conflict. Maybe you're craving more intimacy from your partner, but you're afraid they're going to walk away, so you make that need smaller. That can all look like anxious attachment tendencies. And these patterns are really developed in early childhood, even before we have any kind of conscious memory. So sometimes when we have a caregiver growing up who was maybe a little bit distant with their affection, or we weren't super sure, or they were inconsistent with their affection, there can be this anxious tendency to be needing that validation constantly from a partner or more frequently.
Yeah,
Um,
and a lot of times this can happen at work too. Like,
mm,
now, we're based in the Bay Area now, and my startup career had a lot of very avoidant type bosses, which would make me anxious in my reaction to them because they were never validating. And I wasn't like that to begin with. I always had very secure, but now I was up against people who just literally never would say anything nice.
yes.
So again, like back to the point, like it can change and it doesn't have to be a romantic attachment. Like think about all the people in your lives and it will really help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. And then when people lean into the opposite end of the spectrum, you're going to find it is likely that you lean on the opposite end of the
Yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's a really reasonable and rational reaction, to be wanting validation from work. So yeah, that push-pull, you can feel it. It doesn't always feel so good to be on the extreme end of either. And what I will say about the anxious pattern too, so when we relate it back to more biomarker health, a lot of people with high cortisol tend to have more of an anxious style attachment. So we see this all the time on our biomarker testing that when we look at a cortisol pattern, it's usually people who are in the higher cortisol pattern or DHEAS, which is more of our stress resiliency marker, who fall in the anxious category. It's because their nervous system is constantly in hypervigilance. You're constantly searching to make sure your partner isn't going anywhere, or can I be validated? Or like at work, am I going to be okay? Am I still going to have a job? So this tends to run a pretty elevated stress response, which can really affect our resiliency over time. And then getting to the second, so the opposite end of the spectrum, avoidance. So avoidant attachment, these people tend to get a really bad rap in the more attachment style theory whole community because I think a lot of people who identify with anxious have a really difficult time with avoidance because they tend to downplay their emotions. They crave independence. They're the people that break up with you suddenly. They don't want to have to deal with the conversations. And underneath that behavior is this underlying fear that intimacy isn't safe. That all of a sudden, your needs, if you are even in the secure category, but especially the anxious, it becomes really overwhelming for them. They don't know how to process it. They don't know how to have someone in their life in a healthy way. So they tend to justify on the surface level, this person is too much, or this person's asking for too much validation in, again, romantic platonic setting. And they outwardly blame. There tends to be this underlying fear that a lot of people in the avoiding category can eventually recognize that I actually don't feel safe in relationship of some kind with other people. And that can be really, really challenging to sit with when intimacy and connection doesn't feel safe for you.
Yeah.
And again, that comes from a caregiver who was probably super inconsistent with their affection. So that one's tough. And we need to show the people with avoidant attachment styles love because a lot of people are just really quick to judge, I think, in that category. And then disorganized, this one's confusing, and I think more people fall into this category than most people realize, but it's a combination of both. Like in some situations, you're super anxious and you feel like your nervous system is having a really hard time wrapping your head around connections and you're wanting validation, but then sometimes you get validation and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is so needy. I don't want anything to do with this. And it can feel kind of like this push-pull of wanting someone close, but also thinking they're too much. And a lot of people resonate, I think, in this category more than what people consciously realize. And then secure is what we're all aiming for. It's this ability to maintain healthy relationships. There is a clear sense of self. Yes, you might feel intermittent stress. It might feel sometimes stressful, which is really normal to be in a healthy partnership. Sometimes you might just want nothing to do with your partner, which is also really normal, but you can come back to connection, to community, in a way that feels really balanced and really safe. So I hope all those categories make sense to everyone.
I mean, I think it's important. The reason we address it even in our reports with our members is because if you can recognize your attachment style and your partners or key people in your life's attachment style, it can help you really understand what's going on. And I read this quote today, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was like, in all relationships, assume the highest good of the other person for whatever they did.
I love
Like
that.
it's really nice, right? You start there instead of with this, oh wow, this person did this and it automatically like maybe, the reason somebody forgot something is because they forgot something, right? Or maybe, they're going, I mean, and I think just giving a lot of grace too, like even understanding the context of a person's life. And somebody can switch between styles because of that, like a high stress moment in their life, and they're suddenly being really anxious, or the opposite.
Mhm.
But understanding how we react to people, I mean, we all want to be secure, but that doesn't mean that every relationship is perfect. I think that's a myth. It's more like, how are we engaging with other people in a way that feels healthy?
Mm,
Nobody's
absolutely.
blaming each other or, screaming matches or putting somebody down. It's like hearing somebody out. So we're going to talk about how to get there.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely.
Because
That
if
is
people are like, okay, that's so great. Now I have the information, but what do I do?
right.
But
I
don't
know.
worry, we got you.
We got you, of course. And when we have your full intake form and your cortisol patterns, especially, it's really easy for us to identify that. We can give you a lot of personalized guidance too. And this is actually a big topic of conversation on our online community as well. Some people will post like their post dating stories, and we have a whole group of people who are willing to help you kind of maybe see if you're so in a pattern, maybe like give you a little bit of different perspectives, but also help you navigate your way into navigating into a secure attachment. So we're here for you. For communication techniques, so really important in any, again, kind of a relationship to implement some baseline communication techniques. And these are not going to be perfect, but if we can practice these in everyday life, they can help bring us towards the secure place. So, knowing when to pause and take breaks. There is a lot of value if you're in the heat of an argument saying, you know what, I need a few minutes. I need to gather my thoughts. I'm going to say something that is going to come from a place of maybe instinctual reaction that I'm trying to work through. And I'm going to pause to come to a place that I feel more grounded and settled. Go for a quick walk, call a friend, call a trusted friend. What I do, I'll leave myself voice memos, like talking through something and verbally processing, until I can kind of come to this place that feels a little bit more grounded. But don't be afraid to ask for a pause.
Mm.
Listening versus strategizing. This one's hard, especially if you are any kind of type A person. So being willing to, when someone is speaking to you, and this is the skill to practice in everyday life, especially when there's no conflict, to get comfortable doing this. Really hear what someone's saying. And instead of figuring out how you're going to respond or what the next move is or a good point that you can make, just practice active listening, really hearing where this person is coming from. And it may take you more time to respond, and especially in the beginning when you start doing this, it's going to be a muscle you have to flex. But really hearing someone instead of really planning what you're going to say next is important. And understanding versus controlling. So in an argument, humans, we have this instinct to just want to be right. And if we can come to an argument, especially that this is a relationship, like with any kind of relationship, maybe it's work, maybe it's a romantic relationship. This is a relationship we're invested in some way, and that on some level we care about. So if we can come to that conversation with that fundamental understanding, The argument or conflict is not about winning or
Mhm.
being right. It's about understanding. And this one again is hard because we all have our points of views. And as Julia has seen, like I can be super stubborn. And it takes a minute sometimes for me to be like, you know what? I'm in a place of controlling. I need to be more understanding. I need to shift into how can I understand what this person is telling me versus I'm right and they're wrong. So this again takes a lot of practice. And then acceptance versus projection. When we are in a relationship with someone, this is really important for romantic relationships. Ultimately, if we're going to be with this person and a friend too, actually, we're accepting them for who they are. And this means that they are a flawed person,
Yeah.
just like we are flawed people. And if we're going to choose to spend time with them and choose to have them in our inner circle of people, we accept that this person comes with their imperfections. And we cannot project our idea onto what they should be onto them. It needs to come from a place of acceptance. We can always guide people in really loving ways when they're asking for support or they need advice or we care about them and we want to tell them something. But we cannot come to this from a place of judgment because what we're judging someone for is ultimately just a projection of our own beliefs. It doesn't really have anything to do with them.
Yeah. This one is hard too. And then we're assuming here that under most of these circumstances, we're dealing with people who aren't like, really actively struggling with like a mental illness or something because,
Right.
there's a point with some people, and again, it's like I've had truly narcissistic bosses and exes, and like not just like everybody says that word, but like actually are. And to understand that it's a lot of the times, and it's not really necessarily me being avoidant in a relationship style, but to be like, okay, I know they're wrong, and I'm not going to win this fight right now, and so I'm just going to accept. It's like okay, and eventually I know that the truth is going to come out with whatever it is, right? Or does it really matter, to have this argument?
Right. Yeah, I think that does this really matter is really, really important, especially when you're dealing with someone who has like those clinical tendencies, who
Yeah.
just can see reality in a really different way than what your reality and truth is.
Most of our members are, really high achievers, and it's, really stressful jobs and in relationships with high achievers and doing big things. And so inevitably you're going to come across really strong personalities. And I think that if there's
Mm,
anything, and I mean, I'm a very flawed human being, but if anything I have learned is it absolutely 100% the path will show itself, right? So you don't have to fight it or force it. If somebody is doing the wrong thing to you, that will come out eventually. And in meetings, what I've noticed is the strongest, most powerful person in the room is the one who's quiet,
mm.
takes it all in. So there's a lot of true when we're talking about like power plays, it's like, I've got to get this word in, which you don't actually. And I mean, I'm actually kind of known for like taking something in a meeting and then like the next day sending an email that summarizes like the point that everyone was like arguing about for like going round and round, right? It's wait and digest. Take a walk if you need to. Count to 10. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
No, I love this. I mean, I can see it in my mind, the person who is that really grounded, really calm person at the table who is taking it all in. Like when you picture a really strong, grounded person, it's not the person yelling.
mhm.
It's not the person who's demanding your attention. It's the person who commands it with no effort, and who's just sitting there being able to take in all the surroundings and being able to make a really informed and really solid argument or point without having to be forceful upon anyone.
Yeah, not
That
reacting.
is
I mean, I think about it's like Yoda, right? It's like that Zen master
that's right.
of, and again, it's not strategizing. You're not
Mm,
stressed, but you're taking it in and saying, okay, what's happening here? So many things can be diffused with just that pause.
yeah, absolutely. The slowness, I think, in most, if not all, relationship situations provides a whole lot of clarity. You know, and pausing of any kind is going to break the reaction to what is a familiar pattern for you versus choosing a different reality moving forward. But if you don't pause, it's super hard to create that new path.
And you can show people too, and we'll talk, I know there's other sides on this, but you show people how you want to be treated as well by not engaging. It's funny, it's a silly story, but I watched this Instagram meme, and it's like this couple at a wedding, and the guy is like trying to shove the cake down the woman's mouth and just really like throwing at her. And then he goes to do it and then pulls it away, and then goes to do it and pulls it away. And she just turns and starts dancing with her friend
Yeah.
and just she just disengages, starts dancing with her, and he figures out real quick it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be messing with her, right? You think maybe I should have figured this out before the wedding day, but that
Yes.
relationship of, I'm not going to engage with this behavior. I'm
Mhm.
just not going to.
That's right.
And that's how you teach people you can't be treated that way.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's a lesson I've had to learn. The hard way a lot of times is accepting behavior. And it does teach people that those behaviors are okay. And it can take time to learn how to stand up for yourself. That's for sure.
And it doesn't have to be dramatic either. We
Right.
think
That's
that
right.
it does.
Yeah, but you're right. It absolutely doesn't. It can be really subtle and really grounded. So speaking of, yeah, boundaries.
Yeah.
We say this a lot around here. Boundaries extend relationships. They're not there to push people away or create separation from others. They're there to make sure relationships feel really good on both sides and that they're thriving. And if you're nervous to set a boundary, like a lot of people are, because you're afraid of what's going to happen with that person, we all want to be in relationships where people want us to be our most authentic selves. We want to be able to be in friendships and partnerships where people are really happy, that we feel happy and that we feel like we're taken care of. And that's all a boundary should be, being able to make sure you're taking care of your side of the street so other people can take care of theirs. And sometimes setting your own gives people permission to feel like they can set their own too, which is really powerful. So, what we found about boundary setting that can be really helpful, and this is helpful especially if you're on more of like the anxious side of the spectrum, is getting really clear on what your values are, especially in what friendships you really value, partnerships, business relationships. Is it that you really love collaboration? Do you love intimacy? Do you love humor? Do you love wit? Like, what are the things that you really love about those relationships? So that when something crosses into something that doesn't feel good, you can identify it a little bit more easily. You're like, oh wait, these are what my values are. Maybe it's a helpful way to identify maybe why something didn't feel good. Maybe it went against one of your values. And then getting really clear on what your non-negotiables are. So kind of the opposite of your values. What are things that are definite no's for me in friendships, in relationships, in work partnerships? If you have a boss, you're like, I really cannot work with someone who's calling me at 10 p.m. That's an absolute no for me. That that's a non-negotiable for you. Someone is crossing a line, and that means that relationship has to change, or you have to change what is going on in your life, or if possible, around that relationship. If that's romantic relationships, a non-negotiable that I can think of for me is someone who is invested in their health. So someone who isn't invested in their physical, emotional health for me is it just isn't going to work in a kind of partnership, and that's okay. It just means we have different values, no big deal. But it's a non-starter. So getting really clear on what those are for you, and thinking back to past relationship experiences might make that feel a little bit easier to identify. And then practice speaking up for your needs in other relationships. Again, this is a muscle that has to be flexed. It's not something that comes intuitively for a lot of people. So practice doing this in a relationship for you that feels super safe, like someone that you've been friends with for a really long time, someone that you've been work colleagues with for a very long time, or maybe where the stakes aren't as low. Like maybe it's someone you recently met who it's kind of like a developing friendship or
Mhm.
relationship, and you're not like super invested yet. It's a way that you can speak up even minorly, like, hey, I'm actually not really feeling up for doing that today. Can we do something else? Or I can't answer the phone right now. I'm gonna take an Epsom salt bath. Can I call you later? Like something that feels
Yeah.
super inconsequential. That you can speak up for something that you needed in that moment and get a little bit more comfortable with people respecting you speaking up for your needs. So you've gained the confidence that you can continue to do it. Because if this isn't something you're used to, there's going to be some nerves and it's going to feel maybe a little bit scary that you might get rejected or shut down. So keep the stakes low and light at first.
Okay, and I'll add to this that a lot of people think they're communicating their needs but aren't being clear. So there are people who need specifics. Men, a lot of the men in my life need really specifics. Like if I say I need to just take, a couple of days to think about whatever, it's really like I will call you on at Friday at noon. Like how much time exactly during this isn't always the case, but again, like back to the work situation or people I've been, like investors or some of these people, it's like and sometimes you don't know, but it's like, I'll get back to you hopefully in a few days. I don't have all the answers right now, or I need some time away. And that can feel like a little bit better than just like ghosting somebody, right? And, I'm just like, I'm not even going to talk to them. And then that's another thing too. It's like if you really can't, if you're like really angry at somebody to say, like, I need the night,
Hmm.
like to just think this through and tomorrow I'll be back. Now, and then if a person can't understand that, it's okay to set your boundary to be like, I'm gonna block this person on my phone for 24 hours. That's okay. Like
Right.
who you're protecting yourself at this point. If you need that time, take the time.
That's right.
I mean,
I think that's a really
bosses who do
important point.
that, yeah, sorry, like it's like bosses who call you at 10 p.m. at night, turn the phone off.
Right, exactly.
You,
It's gonna
you
be a
can
no. Yeah.
And who is it? Shonda Rhimes said like yes is a complete sentence, and like get comfortable with it. I mean, more people that have said that, but I remember her at a TED talk being just like, it's okay to just say, or no is a complete sentence. But
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yes is a complete sentence too, but like no is a complete sentence. No, not gonna do that. Or yes, I do want to do that. You shouldn't have to explain yourself.
That's absolutely right. And I think that depending on the relationship, like like what you were saying, you can be kind about someone else's needs. Like if you know someone is like really detail oriented or they're going to be sitting there like so anxious, yeah,
Yeah,
you can specify because that's a kind thing to be
yeah,
like, I'm going to take some space. I appreciate that this is challenging and I will give you a timeline.
right.
There's a way that you can set boundaries that honors both parties and that feels really kind.
Yeah.
So I really
Yes,
appreciate that.
good
Because
point.
it's,
And you also don't have to go into more detail than that.
yeah, 100%.
Like,
100%. And then if this all feels really challenging for you, which I really appreciate, get an accountability system or friend. Um, if you're really close with someone and this is something that you're implementing maybe in your dating life, or you're trying to implement in other friendships or with your boss, tell one of your close friends, like, hey, this is something I'm really working on. I'd really like you to hold me accountable. Like, is it okay if I message you every time I kind of speak up for my needs or I implement a boundary? Or can I run by this like date with you so you can see if I'm missing any red flags or if there's any values I'm not hitting? Like, someone else who's outside of a relationship is just going to be able to inherently see it so much more clearly than you can because you're in a dynamic with someone. So
mhm.
asking someone to be a mirror for you has been one of the most profound tools that I've had for people to reflect back, like my blind spots. And like, Maddie, you're repeating a pattern. And I'm like, oh no, I thought I wasn't. That's right. Oh my gosh. So being able to have someone act as your accountability partner can be really, really beneficial in this work. And we can also be your accountability people. So
Well,
we're
that's
happy to
true.
help.
That is true too. It's, I mean, part of what we do, and our members can always, even book calls with us and say, I'm having this struggle. Like it is a part of your health.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. Yeah, we help people with it all the time. And we love it. So it's great. So this is a quick check-in that we can do just for a journaling exercise, just to kind of get a feel, because again, sometimes the patterns sometimes are a little bit more difficult to see clearly. So journaling exercises can help really identify, what patterns are going on here. Am I repeating patterns? Do I want to create a new pattern or not? So if you want to focus on maybe it's friendships, maybe it's romantic relationships, work relationships, make a list of whatever like bucket of relationships are that you're working with. So let's say it's romantic relationships. Make a list of the past people that you've dated and write out the qualities that you enjoyed about each one of the relationships. What made you attracted to them? What did you enjoy about your time together? What's something that felt really positive and uplifting for you about this dynamic? And then list out the qualities that maybe didn't feel super right for you. What were the things that kind of rubbed you the wrong way? Maybe that this wasn't the best relationship. And once we have several examples of this, you might notice some reoccurring themes. Like maybe there are some people that feel really good for you across the board. There's like a few things that they have in common. And maybe there's some things that didn't feel great for you. And there's probably some similarities there too. And this can again be in any kind of relationship category, but just getting clear on maybe what the patterns are that you're working with here. So this is what we call a through line. This is going to be what's really connecting the dots between all these experiences. And once you kind of understand like what exactly that through line is, ask yourself the following questions. What are the similarities you enjoyed? What are the struggles that you don't want to repeat? So usually if we're still in a place that we're feeling frustrated about our relationships, there has probably been a string of experiences that all feel really similar. And that's where we tend to get frustrated. So if we can find what the pattern is in those things, we can then work to change it. And something really important to ask yourself, am I emulating a behavior from
Mhm.
one of my caregivers or potentially someone from your past? And this does not just apply to romantic partnerships. Did you watch one of your parents be really maybe distant in their relationships, and now that's coming out for you at work and how you handle conflict?
Yep.
Did you watch one of your parents be really submissive, and maybe that's how you're emulating in your current romantic relationship or with your friendships? So, seeing what behavior pattern you're maybe representing from one of your caregivers or someone that was close in your life when you were at a young age. And this can get us really clear. Oftentimes these patterns can pass down through generations. And we'll see our parents do it. Maybe their parents were that way with them, and so on and so forth. And we now have the pattern. We now have the power to look at this pattern and say, I'm ready to change this. I'm done repeating this cycle that potentially runs in my family, which is a really big deal. And a way that we can really help to start to shift this, along with the exercises that we went over, sometimes it feels a little overwhelming. So, what we can do to get our brains on board first is to just really visualize. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. Some people will sit and meditate, have a healthy partnership. Maybe it's them speaking up for their needs. Maybe it's them sharing some intimacy with a partner that feels really safe. That's amazing. For some people, visualizations are a little bit less accessible, and that's really normal. You can also do this in movies and books and TV shows. So the next time you watch a movie where you see a relationship that you're like, wow, I really admire that, or that feels really good, write that down. What are the qualities that you really liked about it? What are, in this book that you're reading that's so captivating, this romantic relationship, what about it is for you is feeling so enticing? There's a reason for that. So as you're kind of collecting, and it's more permission to watch movies and TV, which is cool. But if there's more, as you're like kind of collecting these experiences, the same thing with your past experiences, make a list of all the things that feel really positive to you in friendships or movie relationships or work dynamics that you're seeing
Yeah.
in all different mediums and see what the commonalities are.
I think too, this one is so important, and it's funny. I'll share something that from my personal life when I've dated just mostly entrepreneurs, and they're very type A, and they're running big companies. And I remember I was saying to a friend, I'm like, well, one of my favorite movies is like Before Sunset with Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, and they're just like walking through Vienna for the entire night, and it's so beautiful. And or Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, two movies like in a row that are just beautiful. And they're like, huh, nobody you've dated is that person, right? Like just like putting, and so again, like a good friendship because we could laugh about it and just that humor, which was so important. I'm like, gosh, I want somebody who's funny and I want somebody who's able to take off like just 10 hours and do the spontaneous thing. And whoa. So
That's
the
right.
realization of like what I wanted in the movies and in my fantasy life was completely different from what I was going after. That was a huge realization for me. And then I renegotiated the type of relationships I wanted on all levels. I'm like, you got to make me laugh, even if
Mm,
the worst thing is happening. So think about being on a vacation or on a road trip when everything we know this,
familiar.
everything could go wrong. Okay. Here's our example, right? More examples. We're in Nebraska last month with a car problem because of course it happens in
Middle of
Nebraska
nowhere in Nebraska.
on a super hot day. And it really is. You can't even make up the situation we're in. And we're sitting in this mechanics, and there's no AC, and there's a guy with missing fingers. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to be a jerk about different states or whatever. It's like this really happened. And we just laughed about it. You accept the situation for it is. We end up having great conversation with this person and super kind and nice and funny, right?
It was amazing.
So letting go of the judgment, letting it go of being in control. So this is like relationships, but just situations in life. Like
Mhm.
how are you interacting with people, right? Because you can get all upset and it's not going to really solve anything.
Right.
And so then you start to think about like, wow, my business partner, I'm glad, can roll with the punches and not like lose it, with a situation like this. Like that's what I want for my friendships and my romantic partnerships and anybody I work with is can you have that? And so it's really, really think about like what situations in your life, maybe really stressful, bad ones who is able in that situation to make you laugh or give some levity to it, even if you think it's impossible.
That's right. That's right. It's so important. And we forget like these relationships, and especially particularly romantic relationships and friendships. I mean, these people are supposed to be in your life to like enrich your life for the long
Mhm.
run. And so it's like you gotta have someone by your side who is, and if wit and fun is like, and especially humor is like one of your values, who is that? Who can handle life's ups and downs, who's regulated enough to be able to do that. And so, we have to remember, we can be attracted to people and we can have all this chemistry with someone, and that's all like very well and good. And we also have to have someone, if they don't have the same values as you, none of that will matter in the long run. It's really the people who can get you through life's ups and downs with similar values as you. And the chemistry is always, that's a wonderful thing. But ultimately, the values and the regulation are really important.
That's right. And then, our members who have kids and it's like relationships with their children, it's like, well, they're going to emulate the relationship you have with your partner or your friends or your boss. That's what they're learning from. And
Right.
so if they can see you having a good time or a sense of humor or understanding the values like honesty and integrity and whatever that, then they're going to reflect that back with you too. So it's every relationship. And then we can talk about this. There are times that there you have to leave a relationship, right? So sometimes it's not so easy. But I have walked out of more than one job before because again, I was working for people who were could be pretty toxic and really toxic. And there's, I'm going to share another story. The guy who screamed at me for chewing on pens, but I was doing it because I was so stressed out. So I would just like gnaw on these pens. Really not good to eat plastic, but I did. And he has me go into the boardroom, this huge boardroom. He's at one end of the table and I'm at the end, or it's really like this gigantic boardroom table, just us. And he holds up a pen and says a lot of swear words. And he's like, I want you to promise me you will never eat one of my pens again. And I was like, I promise. And I went up to my office, I packed everything. And I left and I was like, that's it. I do promise you I'm never going to do it because I'm gone. And, I don't necessarily know if that, if you have no money and you have no, and that's your job. And, I don't necessarily think you should just quit, right, without finding something else. But if you're in a toxic boss relationship, it doesn't get better if that person's not willing to communicate with you. Or if they're screaming and yelling at you, that's so deregulated that potentially the only answer is to find another job. And the same thing with relationships. If somebody crosses the boundary, you have to leave. It
Mhm.
doesn't get better. My last relationship, I left when he crossed the boundary. It was a non-negotiable for me. And woof, it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah,
And,
I think
you
relationships
know,
can be one of the most painful experiences.
yeah. And also, I lost my home and stability by leaving. That happened because I moved out. And that, but still, that decision of, wow, this was a boundary, this crossed a line, not that person will never change. They show you who they are. And then if you tell yourself that you're more important than that, the first relationship is with yourself.
Mhm.
So even if you can have a temporary, it always does get better. Sometimes it can take time, but it can always get better. And even when people can be in like scary situations, leaving a boss, leaving a relationship, or a family member where you're like, I can't do this, you have to take care of yourself first. That's the only way that that you will be healthy. You're the first person to take care of, and your kids if you have kids. But it's like you are the first person. And if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of anybody else either.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It
Yeah.
is, yeah, you're right. It all to start with the relationship with yourself. And it's really hard to form a healthy relationship with someone else if we're not pouring from a full cup.
Well, they say on there, it's like you're on an airplane, it's like you got to put your mask on before somebody else is.
Yeah.
But just thinking about back in my career, I worked at Johnson and Johnson for a while, and we did this caregiver initiative. This is people taking care of their elderly parents. And believe it or not, and I'm sure you guys will believe this, a lot of the caregivers had more issues than even their elderly parents for health because
Mhm.
they ignored their own health needs. So examples would be somebody who was taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's for 10, 15 years, but then they get breast cancer and ignore it and they die before their parent does.
Yeah.
And that showed me a lot. Like this was earlier in my career and I thought, that's ridiculous. How could somebody ignore their own health issues and then they pass away? But it makes sense, right? It's like you bottle it up. You're like this their needs come first, their needs come first. I'm going to ignore myself. It can have pretty dire effects. Most of the time it doesn't, kill you, right? But it can give you a lot of other issues like your gut's a mess, your cortisol a mess. So
Right.
eventually it's gonna do bad things,
You're
but
working with us. We're trying to help. Oh, yeah. All the things. Yeah.
well, yeah, and again, and that comes down to it too. It's like we have had situations where it's like, listen, all you can have supplements, you can work out, you can do all of the things physically, but if you remain in this situation, you're never really going to tr find true health.
Yeah. Yeah. It is the reality sometimes. It's that
Yeah.
important.
And it is really sad.
Oh yeah, walking away from people is one of the hardest things to do. It is breakups of any kind, whether that's like leaving a romantic relationship, a job, a friendship. They are really, really hard and they take a lot of time to recover from.
Mm.
So just being really kind and gentle with yourself and know if you know in your bones from a higher place that this is something that is going to serve your health. You have to do what is right for you even when it's really hard.
Yeah. It's hard temporarily.
That's right.
But your body, I see people who like get their car detailed and like everything is like perfect in their house and then they don't take the time to even go for a 10-minute walk. I can't do that, but I can do all these other things. No, you can.
Gotta take care of you. You gotta think you're worth it. And we think you're worth it.
Yeah, we think you're worth it. Yeah, so we should always start there. The first relationship is you.
That's right.
And that's another thing too. If you don't feel that you're valuable of being truly healthy and having an awesome life, it's going to start there. And then you're going to attract people into your life that also believe that.
That's
That's
right.
not good.
Yeah. Self-worth, self-values. It really is everything.
All right. Well, the hidden key to health. It's a lot. What a loaded topic for a Wednesday night.
It is a really loaded topic. Yes. Yeah, we are here with you every step of the way. Forming healthy relationships. It takes there, as you can see, even from this conversation, like we can talk about the superficial stuff, which is like, and attachment style isn't even that superficial, but like the logistics of healthy relationships. But what becomes really clear really quickly is that there's so much underneath the surface. Your self-worth, your self-value, how you relate to other people, how other people treat you. I mean, this is a really complex topic. It's something that we work with our members on. It's in our health reports. It's
Yeah.
something that we actively support people with in their healing journeys on our community. So just please know this was just a taste of what we provide our
Yeah.
members with in their support. And we are here for you as you try to navigate these complex patterns, because it is some of the most profound healing work that you could do for yourself.
Any questions? I know we're almost at that time, but we are happy to hang out more and answer questions.
Yes.
You can go in the chat and you don't have to, or you can always feel free to email us. If you signed up for the webinar, you can email hello@revhealth.com.
That's right. We'd be happy to answer any questions. And yeah, if you're interested in becoming a member, you can check out our protocols, protocol and foundation protocol are on our website. Um, we're here to support you in any way we can.
True health,
That's right.
not just physical.
That's right. That's our saying. Well, thanks everyone. I hope everyone has a really amazing start to their evenings. It's about 6 p.m. here on the West Coast.
Oh, we got a chat. We got a chat. We got a chat.
Oh my goodness.
Hi, Lucy.
Oh, hello. How juggling setting new boundaries with friends and working on relationships versus cutting someone off.
Oof.
Yes. This is a hard, oh my gosh,
I
first of
used
all,
to just cut people off, so I'm all for this now.
yes. So first of all, the fact that you're even acknowledging that potentially this is a pattern that might be coming up for you about, I am kind of used to just cutting people off rather than setting boundaries, I think is a really big first acknowledgement of like, wow, this is something that maybe I have a tendency of doing in the past. And even by acknowledging that, we can leave a little bit of space for a new possibility of I'm recognizing this might be my instinct. Is there another solution here? So in friendships, if something isn't feeling great about a friendship, maybe doing an exercise where you close your eyes, maybe putting one hand on your chest, on your heart, one hand on your abdomen, and really feel into that resistance that's coming up with this friendship. If you can even like picture that in your mind's eye. And from this place where you're getting quiet and you're asking yourself, what is the resistance that's coming up here? Is this an instinctual pattern that's coming up that a new friend is wanting to be intimate and that feels maybe not safe? Like, is this something that I can work within myself about? Or is this friend really crossing one of my values? And this is something that needs to be communicated. Because I think when there's the struggle to implement boundaries, we're not sure where that internal struggle is coming from. Is this something that is against my values and that's worth communicating? Or is this something that's in a resistance to intimacy within myself?
Or you're afraid of their response if you speak up.
Exactly. So if it's against values, then we can identify, am I nervous about the
Yeah.
rejection that might come if I speak up? And can I do this in a way? And if it's a true friendship, sharing that nervousness, verbalizing it out loud. Hey, I'm really nervous to communicate this, that this is how I'm feeling. Then a true friend would respond and say, thanks so much for letting me know, even if they don't like what you have to say. And they can then sit with that.
And I hate the space thing in a lot of ways, but that's sometimes it is. Like I need some time to think about what just happened here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, cutting, yeah, I mean, I did it this, I was pretty known for that actually for a long time in my life. I would say that,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that is what we consider more like on the spectrum, an avoidant tendency. It's
Mhm.
that, I just don't want to deal. I'm out. Because that's a valid technique and strategy. But if we can create just even a slight pause before we do that and kind of identify where the resistance is coming from, our bodies then kind of tell us what the next course of action is from there.
Well, and also back to that quote from the beginning of assuming the best out of someone. Oh, it's so hard to do when somebody's made, gotten you upset with something, but to step back and be like, okay, whatever the situation is, did it happen because the person had malicious tendencies and they really wanted to hurt? Or was it just they weren't thinking? Or is this a pattern, which has been like a year of the person blowing me off or doing the same thing over and over? Um, and that's a good question. That's something to ask yourself too, is okay, what is the best case situation here? I don't know what it might be, but it's like, that person. Is there something else could it that explain their behavior that's the positive thing, right? And approaching it from that sort of grace instead of the like, whatever it might be. And it might, and then if the person is doing it with malicious intent, why are you friends with them? I mean, in that case, you can communicate the boundary of like, you know what? Many times something has crossed what is a non-negotiable for me,
That's right.
and I'm gonna peace out. And it's okay. I mean, I'm about to do that with someone. And it's like something has been crossed too many times. And I've really tried, and we're just at really, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it's like we're at really different points in our life right now. Don't necessarily close it forever, the door, but at this time in life, this isn't going to work. And I feel better about that than ghosting somebody. I just really do. Like, I feel better about being like, this is what's happened with me, and I don't see this working with the current situation. But
Absolutely.
you let me know if things change. I don't know. You know better than we do about the thing, but I mean, this is tough. And honestly, like even Maddie and I have a situation which we have to address probably soon with somebody. But I mean, it's difficult in life. Nobody's perfect and has the answers. And sometimes you're great and have perfect, secure attachment with someone. And then you turn around the next day and have not that relationship with another person.
Oh yeah. It's very fluid. That's why I really love having more flexibility with the attachment styles. It's really important.
And give yourself a lot of grace too, because again, the first relationship's with yourself. Like I like to do this to check in with myself every day. Like today, I almost did this to you, Maddie, where I was like, oh, I'm just really feeling kind of off, so I'm not sure. And to get better at being like, you know what, it's an off day. It just is. And so, you know what, we're not going to do anything. It's just not going to happen. I did that to you actually last week. I'm like, I'm not going to come to yours. where we'll do a Zoom. I just can't, it's not happening. But to respect your own boundaries and be like, because I know that if I did that, not that we would fight, but I know I was in a mood, right? So
Mhm.
that's not going to be productive.
Yeah, of
So
course.
honoring yourself and how you're feeling too, it's valid. It's absolutely valid because you're bringing that mood into the table.
That's right.
You
Absolutely.
can't avoid everything. You can't just be like, I'm not going to go to work because I don't feel a certain way, but you can communicate like, hey, today might not be the day for that big meeting.
That's right. That's right. Is there any other questions that we can answer? I think that might be it. Thank you so much, everyone, for your
Thank
time, your
you,
attention.
and good night.
Good night. Building healthy relationships together in community. We love to see it.
Oh,
Thanks, everyone.
thank you for joining, everyone. I'm going to stop recording.